webinar was recorded for subrecipients of the Tennessee Strong Families Grant on August 7th, 2024. The purpose of this webinar was to provide an overview of early childhood development from birth to 3 years old. Heather Lamb, who is the CCR&R program coordinator at SWARPS, was our subject matter expert presenter. She shared resources to help clients find and choose childcare, in addition to information about the Child Care Resource and Referral Program. The training materials and slides are posted in our training slides section for your reference and review.
Hey everybody, I'm Heather and I'm happy to be here with you today. Excuse my voice. I have the lovely sinus stuff going on and a cough, so please excuse that. I'll muddle through and you'll just have to deal with my scratchy voice today. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen and hopefully everybody can see that. Okay. I'm going to talk a little bit about early childhood development today, and I want this to be interactive, but I know it's hard on Zoom. So, and I know you have like emails dinging at you and phones dinging at you and texts coming at you and your kids asking you for something because they're still not back in school till tomorrow, but that's okay. We're going to make it through. If you all have questions, please put those in the chat. I'm happy to help you. I'm really here as a resource. And so I want to spend some time sharing things that will really help you all as you work with your different groups that, may inform them or lead them to resources, that kind of stuff. So we are going to start with a quiz. So I think that's going to be coming up as a poll for you.
Yep,
And you'll have just a few minutes to answer these questions. Just choose your answers and then we'll go through them just a little bit.
I'm going to give you about a minute and a half. And we should be able to see results now, Heather, yes?
So this is a quiz that's done by UNICEF, and it's just a quiz that says how much you know about babies. The great little thing about it is that after you give, when you're taking the quiz online, after you give your answer, it actually gives you a little kind of snippet about the reasoning behind that. So a baby cannot hear and see at birth. That is actually false. They can actually hear and see in the womb. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. Before your child speaks, the only way he communicates is by crying. I mean, sometimes we think that, right? Because babies do cry a lot, but they actually use a lot of nonverbal communication, just like we as adults do. So if you think about your nonverbal language, like your tone or your body language or the way your eyes move, those things are communication skills that babies actually use very early on. You should talk to your child even before your child can speak. Yes, everybody got that right. Your child drops things to annoy you. Well, sometimes we think that too, but actually they don't. That's a learning process for them. And babies learn better by trying things out and copying other than being told what to do. 100% yes. The brain develops most rapidly when your child first enters school. This is actually false. The brain actually develops the most from birth to age 5. So by the time they enter school, it's actually going down. And that's what a lot of people don't realize. So I'm going to take that off there. And oops. I want to talk a little bit about facts about development that are just basic and that things that you should know and be able to talk to your clients about. Development is predictable. It does follow a sequence. Typically, if you think about babies, they cannot walk until they can sit up. They can't walk until they have core movement and ability to use their hands to push themselves up to stand. So development is predictable in that manner. I will say, and this is a good statement to make, normal is variable. So think about development in terms of babies that are premature or that might have some dependency when they're born, babies that have traumatic birth experiences or other factors that come into play. So those children, their development does vary. It also varies within an age range. If you look at things like walking, a lot of parents will say, oh, my baby's 12 months old, they're not walking yet. Well, actually, when you look at development, walking could happen sometimes early as 8 months old, which that's really crazy if you think about it, but it could happen all the way up to 18 months old. Sometimes you have a personality of a baby who's more laid back. They want to make sure they can do everything correctly before they do it. They're not a full throttle baby. And so they take their time. So that's the variability with development. Obviously, support from caregivers is huge in development. And that's when we talk about that nature versus nurture. Every baby has, is born with, developmental things are going to come along. But when those babies have early experiences that support that with trusting relationships from caregivers, then those things actually happen at that kind of normal rate. And you'll see those come along. We look at a lot of research from babies who are neglected and who don't have those like communication and emotional experiences early on and how those impact their skills later on. And so that's where support from caregivers is really important. And then early experiences matter most. We talked about that in terms of brain development in that quiz, but really early experiences are really the foundation for all development in babies. And so um, I wanted to just give you a basic domains of development slide so you could see those on a larger scale. Um, it varies when you're looking at different websites. Some people use 3 areas of development, some use 4. They're also often called approaches to learning. So you'll see that name as well. But in a basic sense, you've got 4 areas of development: physical, which is your basic gross motor, large body movements, walking, crawling, running, things like that. Fine motor movements, which are anything that are, with your hands, fingers, things like that. And then your actual health and well-being will actually come under that as well. Cognitive development, this is learning and thinking, problem solving. This is where creativity and imagination come in with young children. That all happens in that domain. And then you've got language and communication. So starting off with things like cries and coos and sounds, becoming words, and then sentences, songs, things like that. But also remember that communication is twofold. It's receptive and it's expressive. So sometimes babies or young children understand something, but they don't know how to express it. And so you'll see that as well. A lot of times, children that are dual language learners, they have that receptive communication, so they might understand your English that you're talking about in a childcare setting, but they don't have the expressive English to speak because they're being spoken Spanish to at home. And so those sometimes will come a little later. And then social emotional, that includes things like temperament and personality. It includes self-awareness, so learning about themselves, and self-regulation. So think about behavior, tantrums, throwing a fit, that kind of thing. Those all come into that kind of social emotional thing. I did want to talk a little bit about prenatal and when people talk about development, sometimes it gets left off. And to be honest with you, it's hugely important. And even if it doesn't, even if the mom, doesn't realize they're pregnant till 6 months along, even at that point, it's important. But just some basic things. Between weeks 13 and 16 of pregnancy, the baby's hearing actually develops. They start to hear your heartbeat and your stomach rumbling. So if you're hungry or something's bothered you, between week 25 and 28, they react to noises that are both inside and outside your womb. So think about like trauma and or violence or other things that are happening. They also are soothed by the sound of their mom's voice. And that's why, um, people say babies can smell you, but they can hear you too. And so they know that they're already developing even in the womb. Language development. So babies in the womb may actually recognize some certain sounds from your language. So uh, some of the research really says that some of the early language development actually starts before birth. So they're starting to hear those sounds. They're starting to hear the tone and the way those sounds are spoken. That home language obviously comes in with those dual language learners and hearing that very early on. And those things are kind of foundational for language development. in terms of sight, unborn babies' eyes start to open between week 25 and 28, and they begin to sense light during the weeks 29 to 32. So, I mean, that's still a couple months before they're born, and they can sense light. And then the baby's eyes continue to develop after they're born. So if you know they do that like hearing and vision test at the very beginning, but their eyes actually develop as they're born. If you've seen those books that they have for newborn babies that are the black and white books, that's why they use those basic colors so that those eyes can develop and see those images. And then obviously you'll see more color in books as babies are older. In terms of sensation, between weeks 24 and 25, the baby can actually feel pain. And I just thought that was an interesting fact that sometimes we don't realize, but I think if we did realize, we might do things differently sometimes. So, and then I just wanted to give you a few activities for pregnant moms, and you are going to get these slides, but these are easy things. And sometimes they seem a little crazy if you know that you're reading a book to your belly. But again, these activities really are part of development. And also they're important for the self-care of the mom. So things like going for a walk, or taking a bath, or even just keeping a journal are so important for self-care, which prepares that mom for having that baby and just really puts them in a good mental space while they're pregnant, which again helps that development along. Anybody have any questions so far? Okay. So I'm going to go through each age group and just give you a few things that you might see. Now, remember when I said it's predictable, but it also is variable in terms of development. So if your baby is not doing these things between 0 to 3 months, it's not an automatic risk factor. I think pediatricians do a very good job of kind of helping parents understand that, but we all know that there are parents that are a little bit kind of, oh my goodness, my baby's not doing this. And then there are parents that really don't know what they don't know. And so just knowing kind of what things to look for are important. And also knowing these things are actually developmental. I think that's the other piece to the puzzle that sometimes new parents don't know is that when your baby, for instance, reacts to loud sounds when they're a newborn, that's actually developmental. If they hear a loud sound and they cry, that's part of development and that's normal. Cognitively, watching you, tracking people, tracking items or toys, and being able to kind of focus on a toy, being able to hold their head up some when they're on their tummy, those kinds of things are important as well. And also just the fact of starting to see those early smiles. I think those are huge parts of development that, you know, sometimes we don't even realize or think about. So 4 to 6 months, again, these babies are starting to really interact with the world. And you'll see a lot of times this is when babies start to kind of get their sleep in order. They start to have some regular nap times. They're not up all hours of the night. They start to regulate all those kind of sleep things. They're also starting to move around a little bit more. You'll sometimes see rolling happen during this phase. They're often will take turns making sounds with you. So if a baby coos and then you make a sound back to them, again, that will occur. When we're talking about language and communication, we often use the phrase serve and return. So if you think about like a tennis match and how people hit the ball back and forth to each other, it's the same process with a baby that you would hear a baby coo and then you would give a response back. And you could say something like, oh, tell me more about that. What do you have to talk about today? And then the baby's going to give you something back. And then you're going to give them something back. And so it's a back and forth interaction. Serve and returns are real easy label for it. And I did include a link for a little video about that shows parents how to do that. It's very simple, but also really helps them kind of further that development. And then social emotional, they're starting to know those familiar people in their lives. So not just that mom that they've been hearing since the prenatal section, but they know now maybe some other trusted caregivers, maybe grandparents, maybe a caregiver in a childcare program even. So they're starting to develop those relationships with people and know those people that are safe and that they can trust. Excuse me. In the 7 to 9 month range, again, um, there are more things happening every single day. With babies, sometimes those small things are actually very big things. So when you look at the language and communication section and it says lifts arms to be picked up, you're like, yeah, every baby does that. But that's actually communication skill for babies because lifting your arms is saying, hey, I'm over here. I want you to pick me up. That's their way of saying that, right? Because they don't have the words to say, hey, I'm here, pick me up. By the time they can do that, they don't want you to pick them up anymore. But so realizing that all these little small moments are actually big moments are, I think, the key for parents and families is just to take those little small moments. One of the things that I think is amazing is playing a game of peekaboo with a baby that's about this age. So in that 7 to 9 month range, if anybody has grandbabies or nieces or nephews, um, playing peekaboo is an incredible way for social emotional learning. It's something that people have been doing with babies forever. And it seems like such a basic thing. It's just one of the things when you see a baby, like, hey, peekaboo. But actually, it is a part of social emotional development. Thinking about them moving things from one hand to another. So being able to take a toy and actually transfer it to another hand. When they're doing that, they're crossing that midline of their body. So it's actually giving them some stability physically as well. And it's helping that fine motor development, being able to actually grasp that. And you'll see that start to happen with food as well. Picking up little tiny things on the floor in the kitchen that you really didn't want them to pick up. That's when those little fine motor skills are getting developed better. So 10 to 12 months, this is when they will start to play games with you, pat a cake or other little songs or finger plays or rhymes that you might have, five little monkeys, those kind of things. They're going to also have some reactions to strangers. So, and again, like I said, development is variable because you may have a baby or you may have a grandbaby or a baby in your family that you're like, oh, they reacted to strangers when they were 6 months old. Again, it's all variable. I have a daughter who reacted to strangers when she was 6 months old. She hated everybody for most all of her early life. And so every baby's temperament also impacts all of these pieces of development when you're thinking about that in terms of like how they develop relationships with a caregiver, in terms of trusting adults, in terms of reacting to them. That all comes into play with their temperament and personality as well. If you've got those really shy babies who are very slow to warm up, they may not develop those relationships with trusted caregivers very often. They may only have one or two that they really kind of gravitate towards. You'll start to see them do things like wave bye-bye or say simple things like mama or dada. Also, babbling will be going on during this time. One of the cognitive things that I always try to talk about when I'm doing anything with families is we call it fill and dump. And so parents will say, but they just dump everything out. They do. And that's actually developmentally appropriate for babies to dump everything out and fill it back up and dump it out again. And so having those cabinets in your kitchen that you're not really going to use or cook in that they can get into and bring everything out on the kitchen floor, dump it out, fill it up. That's a great activity for them cognitively. And I know it drives us crazy when we're trying to clean up the house or childcare area. And we use this a lot with our caregivers because they also say, oh my gosh, all they do is dump everything out. And so give them items to dump out and fill up. I mean, if you can't beat them, join them. That's what I always say. And then thinking about things that you can hide. So if you've ever done anything with a baby where you've taken a toy and then you put a blanket over it to see if they can find it, that's a really cool cognitive experience too. And then physical development, obviously, they're going to start to pull the stand, cruise, but there's also babies that at 10 months old, they're already running. I mean, we have somebody that works with us and her baby was running at 9 months old. It's variable again. So I think when you look at these kind of things, you have to look at them on a larger scale and know that, every baby is different. Another thing to also remember is that when babies are working on one skill, a lot of times it's like this game of back and forth. So if a baby's really working on walking, so they're cruising around furniture, but they're really trying to let go. A lot of times other areas of development will kind of pull back while they're working on that area so heavily. And then once they can walk, you'll see those other areas come back up. So maybe the language is not really coming on quickly. They're not really doing a whole lot, but they're really working on walking. And so if you think about it like that, like those areas kind of like are in a race with each other. Those developmental areas kind of go back and forth based on what that child is really focusing on. I think about babies learning to roll over. When they're learning to roll over, that's all they do, right? Like you put them in the floor and that's all they're working on. And so thinking about picking up a toy and transferring it to their other hand, they might not be working on that because they got to roll over first. So just knowing that development is so different from one baby to the next. This is getting into toddler world. So lots of things happen. And honestly, toddlers are probably my favorite age group of all. I worked with toddlers. I spent my classroom years with toddlers. And I think the greatest things about them are that you can see them learn every single day. You can see like that light bulb moment of those little things. So pointing to ask for something or looking at a familiar object. So here's the ball, and they look right at the ball. You'll also start to see them imitate. So if they see you on the phone all the time, then they'll put things up to their ear to pretend to talk on the phone. They use everything. They use blocks. They use everything. Um, they'll also kind of use items differently. So for instance, if they have a round ball, that's a ball. But if they have a plastic food that's like an orange, but it's also round, sometimes they'll call that a ball. And so that's part of that understanding development, kind of making those pathways in their brains to differentiate between, oh, these are both round, but they're not both a ball, right? So it takes a little longer to do that. You'll start to see them stack objects, and a lot of times they're walking at this point unassisted, and then they start to be able to feed themselves. So some of that self-help and social emotional comes back in as well, along with physical. So if you look at like using their fingers to feed themselves, that's not just a physical skill. It's also social emotional because that's self-help. So as they can do things on their own, that kind of gives them that autonomy. And then this 18 to 24-month age, you'll see a lot of things happen here. They're learning about other people during this time, and they're learning about the world around them and kind of where they fit into that. I think a huge factor is that often parents with multiple children, or if they're in childcare, they want children to share, and that's a huge factor. They don't share. They're not, they're still selfish at this age. They have to learn empathy, and they have to learn some a little bit of self-awareness about others and how feelings of others to be able to understand sharing. And so that's going to happen. In terms of social emotional, I think also you'll see tantrums in this phase a lot, and parents will probably talk about that. Um, you'll often see tantrums in this phase and in other phases when areas of development are lacking, and that's something that we see a lot. So let's just give, for example, a dual language learner, a child who maybe has Spanish as their home language, and they are going to maybe a childcare program that they only hear English, and that child's starting to have tantrums. That child can't communicate like they want to. with their peers, with their teachers, with caregivers, with their parents about what's going on. So that causes frustration and sometimes causes tantrums. So you will see that in this phase. It's very developmentally appropriate. You'll also see tantrums when they don't know what to do. So they don't know how to say to somebody, hey, after you're finished using that car, can I use it? We want them to know what to do there, but they don't know that. And so we have to teach them all the skills that go with that. First of all, how to touch somebody in a gentle way and not bash them on the head. And then giving them a few simple words or signs even to go with that say like, I want to be next, or, stop, or no, don't touch me, whatever it is, so that they can start to communicate on their own. And then you'll see some also things like scribbling come at this age. Now, those scribbles are very like haphazard. They're not based on any particular, they're not dedicated movements that they're actually going to, I'm going to make a circle, or I'm going to make the letter A, or anything like that. And you'll also start to see a lot of climbing in this phase, climbing furniture, climbing everything, climbing walls, all the things that you can imagine. This is a TED Talk that I included. This is a 7-year-old little girl who did this TED Talk about how every child can thrive by 5. I think it is well worth seeing. I think you could show this to families. It's powerful, and she's incredible. And so we're going to watch this really quick, and we all just let me know if you can hear, so that I'm not just playing this haphazardly.
What if I was to tell you that a game of peekaboo could change the world? Sounds impossible, right? Well, I'm here today to prove it's not. Hi, I'm Molly, and I'm 7, and this is my little friend Ari. Say hi, Ari. Hi. Oh, and this is my neighbour, Amajot. He has to take Ari away now to get ready for our experiment. But don't worry, they'll be back. My talk today is about some powerful things that grown-ups can do that shape us as children and the adults we become. How do I know? Because my parents and people around me did them, early and often. I know not all kids are as lucky. Some of my friends, some kids at my school, and many around the world. And I would really like to help change that. Thanks to scientists, we now know just how important the first 5 years are for our health and development, especially our brains. Ari started learning long before he was even born, from inside his mummy's tummy. When Ari was born, he was tiny, and he cried all the time. He was always hungry, and he pooped a lot. Now, he laughs and giggles and makes funny noises. But those are just the changes we hear and see. There's way more going on inside. So, let's talk more about our brains. The blue bag is the rough size and weight of a healthy baby's brain at birth. The red one is a baby's brain after the first year. It almost doubles in volume. And by my age, it's almost 90% the volume of an adult brain. Our brains develop faster in our early years than at any other time in our lives. It can create up to 1 million neural connections every second. But we need your help. Our healthy development depends on these top 5 things. 1. Connecting. 2. Talking. 3. Playing. 4. A healthy home. 5. Community. All of this helps our brains and us reach our full potential. So what's something you can do that can really make a difference? Scientists call it serve and return. That's just a grown-up way of saying connect, talk, and play with us. And here's the really big news. Amajot, Ari, you ready?
Ready?
Copycat games build imagination and empathy.
And
Naming games build vocabulary and attention.
is it Daddy? Ari! Daddy? Ari!
And games like Peekaboo, yep, Peekaboo, actually build memory and trust. Each time you talk to us, play with us, make us laugh, it not only builds and strengthens our relationships and mental health, it actually teaches us some of the most important life skills. From making friends, to taking the test, to getting a job, to one day maybe even starting a family of our own. Interactions early and often matter. Take it from me, the 7-year-old up here, talking about brain science. Okay, now, let's see what happens when the connection is taken away. So now he's trying to get his dad's attention again. He's reaching out like, that was fun, why have you stopped? I know it's important for adults to use their devices sometimes, but kids are hardwired to seek out meaningful connections. Not receiving them causes confusion and stress. Okay, Amajot, please re-engage.
Sorry. Okay.
Now, what if a whole childhood was like that last 30 seconds? How hard it would be for a child to feel calm, to feel safe, to learn to trust anyone, and the lifelong impact that would have. That makes me feel sad. Ari only reacted the way he did and recovered so quickly because the connection between him and his dad is usually so strong. The positive relationships with the grown-ups in our lives gives kids the confidence we need to try new things, to explore, and be a kid. So please try and remember, the most special period for our development is the first 5 years, starting from inside Mummy's tummy. What's something really impactful you can do? Serve and return. And when? Early and often. Please give it up for Amajot and Ari. Every moment together is an opportunity to connect, talk, and play. Imagine the difference we could make if everyone everywhere did this. To us, to children, it's so much more than just a game. It's our future. Thank you. See? Peekaboo really can change the world.
Okay. I hope that was I first of all, I would rather hear a child talk to me all day than an adult. So I've heard lots of those TED Talks, but I feel like hers is so powerful, and it was really simple information for parents and families. She laid it out really easily and quickly and simply. So I did want to take a moment when we're talking about development and thinking about early childhood development in those first 5 years to talk about screen time, because I'm sure you've probably looked at your screen a few times and your phone and your other things. Screens kind of consume our world at this point. We're on one right now, doing a training, but they do consume us. But the research actually shows that children do learn best from human interaction. The World Health Organization actually recommends no screen time for babies that are under 2 years old. And how many times have you gone to a restaurant and seen a baby with a screen to keep them busy? I mean, I probably did that even myself just to keep my children occupied in the car or whatever. And the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends no screen time for children under 18 months old at all. And so I think, and only 1 hour of screen time a day from ages 2 to 4. So think about children ages 2 to 4 that you see around and how much screen time they are probably getting. Screen time really reduces the ability for children to read faces and social cues. And I think we see that with older children and with teenagers a lot, because reading faces is part of nonverbal communication, right? So understanding you know if your mom was mad at you by the way she looked at you. She didn't have to say anything. So those faces and those social cues, like, oh, wait, I shouldn't say that, or, oh, I need to be quiet right now. Those kinds of things. Screen time reduces that ability to kind of practice those in real life. And it reduces the ability to control impulses. So we are a society that does not know how to delay gratification anymore. We used to order something and it would take 2 weeks to get to our house. And now if it's 2 days, then we're frustrated because Amazon didn't get there quick enough. So we don't know how to control impulses because of screens, because everything is that quick. If you need to know who the president was in 1972, unless you're like a history major, you can look it up on your phone in about 5 seconds, right? As fast as you can type, you can find that out. And so those impulse controls for young children are huge. They're huge in their development of social emotional learning, those things like tantrums, being able to self-regulate, right? Know when you're upset, know how to calm down. All those things come into play with impulse control. And screens actually hijack attention spans. So when we work with childcare educators, and if you know anything about the world of childcare, it's been in a crisis for a little while. COVID sort of brought that to light, but our field is primarily comprised of 18 to 25-year-olds at this point. And so when we're doing any kind of training with them, we have to do it in a very quick manner. No long videos. We use a lot of things that are short, like TikTok and short, quick movements, because attention spans are no longer. People can't pay attention. I mean, even to sit through a movie, a lot of people can't pay attention. If young children are constantly stimulated by screens, they really forget how to rely on themselves for entertainment. If you think back to when you were a child, or at least when I was a child in the summer, my mom locked us out of the house. Like, she was like, all right, bye. Y'all are going out until lunchtime. And what did we do? We had to figure out what to do, right? We built forts, we made mud pies, we played outside, we did all the things, but we didn't rely on a screen for entertainment. And so I think it takes away that as well. I just wanted to give you all some pieces of that information because I think it's so powerful for families to even just, when you know something, there's that saying, like, when we know better, we do better. And I think when we start to know these things, then when you're giving your child a screen, it'll pop in your brain like, oh, wait, I don't want to do that for that long. And so it really does, I think it impacts them. What we're seeing now is into like high school age and into adulthood. And so that's really, it's important, and it's a part of development now that we have to really talk about.
Hey, Heather, real quick,
Yeah.
I want to pause you. We have a question in the chat from Melody. She says, what happens when a child is not allowed floor or tummy time and miss some of the milestones of rolling over or pushing up with their upper body? How does this impact them in the long run? Or maybe even if you have interventions to
Um,
help later on.
it hugely impacts them. Tummy time's a huge part of that core development, neck, shoulder, stomach muscles that really allow babies to be able to roll over, sit up, crawl, stand, walk, et cetera, et cetera. I will tell you that there are babies out there that hate tummy time. I had one, and there are definite alternative ways of creating tummy time experiences for babies. I didn't include any of that, Brooke, but I can send you that so that you can include that on the back end. Things like putting the baby on your tummy and laying back with them, they're still on their tummy. Putting them across your knees on their stomach, they're still on their tummy, right? They're still doing those same core movements. That football hold, that where you hold the baby in your arm here, they're actually on their tummy. And so there's some different alternative ways. When they miss those experiences, what we see is that development is delayed in those areas. They can make it up, but a lot of times it does impact them in terms of having that core strength. And it just delays those kind of milestones that typically come along pretty quickly and easily. Sometimes rolling from front to back and back to front is a challenge because they haven't had enough experiences on their stomach. And there are lots of little activities to do. People will talk about like putting them on your counter after they have a bath, like if you bathe them in your kitchen sink, to lay them on their tummy after the bath. So just different ways of thinking through that and doing it are really important. I hope I answered that. I just wanted to mention a few minutes about early experiences and how much they matter. The little girl talked about that, about early and often, serve and return, but I don't know how much information or exposure that you've had as a professional around ACEs. I think probably some at this point, adverse childhood experiences. We talk about that a lot. Trauma impacts children and it impacts adults too. And it really does kind of wire your brain. Those different kinds of stress, when we think about tolerable stress or toxic stress, those are different. The stress of, everyday life is one thing, but the stress of being homeless is a whole different thing. And so I think that just to kind of reiterate the fact that those early experiences do matter, that children need trusting relationships with at least one person in their life to make a difference and to help them. I know we can't, if we could take all the trauma away, that would make a huge difference. And sadly, we can't do that. But what we are finding is that through those trusting relationships with caregivers, children can really come back from that. They're so resilient. We actually are, as humans, are very resilient and can make it through those. But I did include some information about ACEs that you all will get at the end. If you want to share anything like that with your families, I think it's very powerful when you see it for the first time, and it can really impact the way you view certain experiences. It also, at least in childcare, in the world of childcare that I work in, our caregivers often forget about those things when they're taking care of a child every day, and they forget that those pieces of trauma, that little toddler brings that trauma with them every day. And so when they have more information about ACEs, and when they're informed and feel comfortable knowing about that, I think it changes the way in which they interact with children. And it really causes that empathy to come in the back of your mind when you see a particular behavior happen with a toddler or preschooler. Something as simple as, them throwing something across the room that could really trigger an adult normally, like, oh my gosh, they just threw that toy across the room and almost hit so-and-so in the head. Somebody with some ACEs experience can really see that a little differently and look at that differently and maybe react differently as well, which is important. So what can caregivers do? And when I say caregivers, I really mean anybody who comes into contact with young children. This could be you. This could be obviously the parents and families. There are people, those are people like me or childcare workers or people that work in a church nursery. Anybody who comes in contact is really a caregiver. But what children and also really adults need in their lives are a few things. One is supportive relationships. So they need those relationships that are stable, that are trusting, that they can depend on. They need some life skills, right? So adults need life skills in terms of like parenting, budgeting, employment, things like that. But children need life skills. How do I put on my own coat? How do I pull up my own pants? How can I go and take some deep breaths if I'm feeling frustrated? Those sorts of things, those life skills that will help you, on down the road. They also need community. So mentors, teachers, role models that can really come alongside them, meet them where they are, have some empathy and coach them along the way. Actually, everyone that works with us in CCR&R, Child Care Resource and Referral, they're called coaches because that's what we do. We coach and mentor. We don't instruct. We don't do any of that. We're there to come alongside educators that teach our very young and try to help them the most. And then really quality childcare and early education is the other component of that. And that's every child deserves that in whatever capacity their family wants to provide that to them in. Might be that they stay at home until they go to kindergarten. They might stay at home until they go to preschool or Head Start. They might go to childcare very young, or they might be cared for by a family member, grandparents, a neighbor, that kind of thing. So it varies, but having those things are so important for really the success of development all around for young children and really for adults. I always say children, but I think it kind of carries true. So these are the basic things. If I could tell you 4 things that you could say to your clients that you're working with when they say, "What can I do?" Sorry, my pictures are a little blurry. Oh, well. There's 4 basic things. First is read. Early, often, all the time, anytime. It doesn't matter what you read. You can read a menu from a restaurant. You can read the street signs when you're driving. You can read the back of the package at the grocery store. It doesn't matter. But what reading does is it makes connection. It allows for that language development, but it also creates social emotional experiences that are positive for young children. So read everything you can. Read before babies are born, when they're babies, not just at night before bed, but maybe read books in the bathtub. They make books that go in the bathtub. So that's just reading is a basic one. The second one is sing. Also, if you didn't know, I'll tell you now, babies and young children don't care if you sing well. They really don't. You can be the worst singer in the world. They don't care. But singing is a form of language and communication with young children. If you can't get your children to do something, if you sing, it will change the game. If you put on music, it will change the game. I learned that really, really early as a classroom teacher of toddlers. It could be going absolute crazy and they were like, bouncing off the walls, and I could put on a song and they're like, what? Or I could start singing a song. So, singing is one of those things. Again, sing everything, sing, your route when you're driving in the car. I sing, this is going to sound really crazy. Don't think I'm psycho, but I sing to my dog all the time and he loves it. So again, they don't care if you're a professional singer. They don't care if you have tone or pitch or any of those fancy things that, people that really know how to sing have. But singing, playing music, dancing, having fun, having a kitchen dance party, all those things are so impactful and they're so simple. Talking, this is a really obviously easy one, but I think that with very young children who are nonverbal, sometimes what happens with adults is they're like, but they don't talk back to you, right? But they actually do talk back to you. We've talked about that today. They actually communicate back to you with their, look at this baby. He's so talking to his mom or caregiver. Like he is talking to her. Who knows what he's saying, but he's got some things to say. So give children the opportunity to talk, and you talk to them. Talk to them while you're, fixing dinner. Tonight, I'm going to cook spaghetti. I have to put in the meat. And then after I cook the meat, I'm going to add the spaghetti sauce. I'm also going to add some garlic. And when I put these noodles on, I'm going to wait for them to boil. It sounds random, but we call it, in our world of childcare, we call it being a commentator. So if you think about like a football game or a baseball game where you have the commentators who are kind of giving you the play-by-play, it's the same kind of thing. You can do that with babies, you can do it with toddlers, you can do it with young children. And when you get children that are verbal, you can do things like asking questions or giving them simple open-ended statements like, tell me about your picture. Tell me about your school today. What did you do? Those kinds of things will really make an impact for them. And then the last one is play. And if I could say anything to you all, play is so undervalued in early childhood. It's undervalued in education. It's undervalued in our school system. I could go on a soapbox for years and I won't do it because I know you don't have time. But play is the earliest form of research. Albert Einstein said that. And it is. Children learn best by doing, not by being told what to do. So they need to play. They need to have challenges. They need to figure things out. They need to resolve conflicts. They need to imagine. They need to be creative. They need to be silly. And we need to be able to do that with them. I think adults forget how to play. Like, when is the last time you actually played and had fun and did something, that wasn't adultish? Like, when's the last time you went out in the rain and stomped around in the puddles when it was raining? I mean, how freeing really is that once you do it? Playing releases hormones that make us happy, and children need that in order to develop. So read, sing, talk, play. Those are the 4 basic things. There's nothing fancy, but when you do all those things, children really can develop as they need to. I do want to show you some helpful websites, and all this will be included for you, but I want to show you first some websites that are on development. The Harvard Center on the Developing Child is an incredible website, and I would say it's mostly suited for people like you. Families could get information there, but it's better. This is a website that's better served for you to get information or for you to find videos. Can I click on these? Do you know, Brooke, if I'm going to be able to do that? I don't know. I guess
You should be able to if it was already embedded.
it doesn't look like it.
Yeah,
But that's
set it up like that whenever you made it.
Yeah, I did set it up, but it's not. I don't know if it's gonna.
Maybe because it wasn't exported and still in
It's
Canada.
okay. I can pull them up in just a few minutes. Then there's the CDC website, which gives developmental milestones. It's great as well, and I'll show it to you. And then pathways.org. I'm just going to go ahead and go past these so I can go into them and show. I will show you this stuff as well. I did embed these, I think. We're about to find out. Oh, I did. Can you all see that? So this is the Tennessee Department of Human Services Child Care Services website. This is the main hub for anything child care related. If you notice, there'll be some tabs over there on your left. Basic things like finding child care resources for providers and parents. I do want to go into this just to show you. So there's a child care locator map that'll come up. And you can put in a particular address, and then you can actually search what age group you're looking for, what kind of childcare you're looking for. So if you wanted to put in Knox County, you could click that, and then you could locate some providers in the county, which is going to show you a ton. And then each provider that comes up, you can actually click this more details button. And what it will give to that parent or family are some contact information. So you see there's a phone number and website. And it gives some basic information about their operating hours. Now, these are not always, like this one says no information. It'll sometimes give rates. It gives you every single visit that this child care program has had by a regulatory agency. And you can click into those and see how they did. Like, was there a corrective action? There was here on this one. And so you can actually see that so that you can make an informed decision as a parent about where you want to put your child in terms of childcare. Because as a childcare resource and referral agency, we don't refer any particular childcare program. We can't be liable for that, number one, but also that's a personal decision. That's a gut decision you make as a parent and as a family. And so you really have to choose what's right for you. Anything you find in this portal are all licensed through the Tennessee Department of Human Services or the Tennessee Department of Education. So there are two different types of childcare licenses that programs can hold. And so those would include centers, some of them obviously like faith-based or otherwise, and then also licensed family or group homes, which are similar but also different in terms of how many children they accept. Most of the time as well on that child care map, it will tell you if that program accepts child care certificates. So if you're not familiar with that, I'll talk about that. But the Child Care Certificate Assistance Program actually provides a subsidy to help pay for childcare for low income families. So there's some stuff here on down. You can look on this website, or people can, and they can learn about types of regulated childcare. They can learn about violations or complaints, anything they really want. The other tab that's really important is this childcare payment assistance tab. And so it gives you some information about exactly what the qualifications are in terms of income. And it gives you some, like, for instance, this is the income eligibility. So it'll give you information and how much they can make and how much they pay. And that money actually goes when a program accepts childcare certificates. What happens is they determine the subsidy based on the income of the family. And then once they enroll in that program, that program is paid by Department of Human Services on a weekly basis. And then the family, for instance, let's just give a example. Maybe the fee per week is $200 and DHS is paying $150. So the family would owe the other $50. So that's how that child care assistance kind of works out. And it gives you some things about eligibility. There are some applications here and instructions in English, Spanish, and Arabic and Somali. So those are pretty straightforward. There's also a video there that can help you. And it gives you kind of, what you have to have, verifications of citizenship, all the things. And it tells you about, what you might owe, those kind of things. So I think this is a really helpful website. This is also where Families First is kind of brought into the picture, and that's a working program where people are working. And you'll see that parents in the Families First who need childcare to complete the work activities in their personal responsibility plan. Again, there's a button to click right there, and it kind of gives you the information there, and it talks about applying for services, eligibility, all those kinds of things. This is probably this basic, childcare services website is going to give you really everything you need in terms of childcare payment assistance, Families First, childcare, anything that families might need or could benefit from. WIC is also a part of this and is in this same kind of area. I also want to show you, because I didn't. This is the Child Care Resource and Referral website. Child Care Resource and Referral is the grant program that I work under through SWARPS. We have a subcontract through UT SWARPS. And we mainly focus on training and services for childcare professionals, but we also have some stuff for families. So if you go down to like explore resources, you can look at different topics and find some different resources by topic for, and like I said, our website is just being built out right now. So this is there's going to be more and more on there, but you'll see some different things there that will be helpful to families or could be helpful to families. And there also will be a button for finding childcare on here as well. So they can find that either way. And a contact button for them to contact our direct office. So we sometimes get phone calls or emails from families that are looking for childcare and they don't know exactly how to go about doing it or need help with childcare assistance, things like that. And we can come in and try to help with that as well. I am going to go back to I guess I'm going back to my presentation here. I showed you child care certificate, so I'm going to go on and then I'll go show you the other websites at the end. Do we have questions at this point? Just want to open it up for just a minute. I'm going to share. Y'all are getting to see my screen.
The web page from
This is the CDC's developmental website, developmental milestones. It's a very, very simple website. The thing that I think is really cool is they have this cool tracker app that parents can download. Any kind of apps are like, those quick kind of things. So you can download that. You can look at this. I think it'll even give you notifications like, hey, here's what your baby should be doing, that kind of thing. But if you click on some different things, like I'll just click on the 2-month and it'll kind of give you some basic things about what your baby should be doing. Sometimes there's videos or other like little things that, you can play and see, and it goes through those. They're very simple. You can print them out. They come in English and Spanish. And then there's also a, let's see, the milestones checklist. So these are kind of like a PDF checklist. And this is something you all could print off and use with families. These are free things for parents and families. We use them with our childcare actually. So it's kind of like this 2-month website, 2-month old milestones, and then it kind of gives some like things about talking with your doctor, etc. And then there's some activities on the next page, so it gives you some things to do with your baby, and it goes on through every single like stage of development. This is a very easy thing to access, and I gave you all that you'll get all of this stuff so you can use that and print it as you want to. The other website that I think is really great is called pathways.org, and it's similar in nature to the CDC website. It's a little more, honestly, I think family friendly and less like researchy, but they also do have an app, and I think they also have some stuff about early intervention on there as well. And obviously, I'm going to go up here and click so that you all can kind of see. But this is what I think is really cool. So this gives you an overview of like 0 to 3 months. And if you see these tabs here in the middle, it says like milestones and abilities. And then it gives you, look at these topics, like everything: motor, sensory, communication, feeding, play and social, coordination, daily activities, and self-expression. That's under that one tab. Then there's a games tab. So it talks about let's play. So week 1, you can do like, here's a game for your baby, and it has a video that they can watch. So it talks about like, having a mobile for your baby to look at, sleeping direction, tubbing time, those kind of things. I love that. This is probably my favorite. There's also some videos for parents, and they come in different languages as well. and then helping meet those milestones. So, talking about like parent concerns, those kind of things are there. This is this website is so all inclusive. It gives so many, like somebody asked a question about tummy time, and here's a little like thing there that will just take you to some important things and talks about the basics, essential tummy time moves, tummy time abilities, you know, everything that I'm telling you all today is not a secret. There's nothing fancy about it. It just happens to be my world. So it's what we do all the time. But these are resources that we use with our parents and families that are in licensed childcare. And so I just wanted to be able to share those with you all as well. I think the Pathways is a super easy resource. And like I said, you can, there's also an app with it. Let's see. I think I'm going to go back to my questions. We already did resources. This is the QR code for Strong Families and their contact info. You're also welcome to contact me. I will send these slides to Brooke and Chase, and they also have all of the websites in beautiful form for you all. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them. That's really all I have today, I think, Brooke.